Welcome to Page to Screen, the podcast where Nikki and Christina discuss books that were turned into movies and films that were adapted from books. As always, we do remind you that spoilers lay ahead. Now, we invite you to decide with us the age-old question, which is better, the book or the movie?
Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And that's the same with this podcast episode. Welcome back to Page to Screen. I'm here with my favorite piece of chocolate, Christina.
I got to pay.
Is there anything else you'd like to say, Christina?
That's all I gotta say about that.
Oh.
Hi, Nikki. How are you?
Oh, bless. I just wanted to apologize for saying Christina like Joan Crawford just a minute ago.
We're not gonna drop that one anytime soon.
No. Christina. No. Oh my goodness. So I'm glad we did this one.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. If you listened to the last episode, you know that this as part of our Father's Day month spectacular is an episode dedicated to everyone's favorite, well, every dad's favorite movie, Forrest Gump.
Yes, and we're going to start with the 1986 novel by Winston Groom, also called Forrest Gump. And the easiest way to describe it is that Forrest Gump is a man that they don't actually give him a specific diagnosis in the book other than saying that he has a low IQ, and they call him slow. So I'm sure that you and I both might use that word, and we don't mean that as an insult or anything. It's just the way that the writer explains it. And then he kind of just bumbles his way through the world, from Vietnam to ping pong championships to space.
Yeah, I just want to say, when we did Who Framed Roger Rabbit and we went all off on Genie in a Teapot, I'm sorry, the part where Forrest goes to space is a genie in a teapot, and we'll get to it. But
that's the exact feeling that I have with this book as well. And it's funny because we're dealing with these two books with Who Censored Roger Rabbit and Forrest Gump that were really not that popular. And some producer somewhere bought the rights, and then they get turned into movies that are completely different by Robert Zemeckis.
Yeah. It's, that was what was really funny is did you read the information about like the trivia and stuff about Forrest Gump?
Yes.
The one that I found to be the most interesting was that the original treatment, like the original idea behind Forrest Gump, was very Roger Rabbit-y, in which there were, like, what was it? Forrest would always have like an animated Curious George walking around with him. Anytime they showed Jenny, she had like animated wings. So it was a very weird mixed animation live action situation based off of what Robert Zemeckis had previously done. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad they didn't do that.
Well, the book is, I was trying to explain the book the other day. For me, the book is 8 edits away from being good. Yeah. There is something here that I find interesting, and it's a completely different main character than most books, but it's just so clunky and weird, and then it completely jumps the shark with the space stuff, that any like decency that is in the book is kind of completely lost on me.
Yeah, like, it's hard to talk about the book standalone without comparing it to, the movie. Whereas the character of Forrest in the movie is someone very likable and lovable and someone that you want to see succeed. Whereas in the book, the way that Groom has written him is... it's very hard to want Forrest to continue on some of his madcap adventures, because Forrest is just, they do say that he's slow, he has a lower IQ, but they also call him like an idiot savant. He's really good with math, he's really good with numbers. At one point he's a chess champion. It's just like anything he could throw at this, he did, and he just left it all in. And I don't know, there's something about the Forrest in the book that I did not like. Like, I didn't want him around me.
Yeah, Forrest, Forrest is someone who you can kind of pity, but there's not a whole lot of personality for you to connect with.
Yeah.
And then he does so many things that are really kind of cruel. I mean, one huge difference between the book and the movie is that in the book he doesn't go back to his mom. When he leaves and he goes, it's the same thing where it's so weird because there's so many similarities, but they're so completely different. It's the same thing where it starts with him as a kid, and then he goes into football, then he gets sent off to the war, but all of it is a completely different lens. It's very, I think, dark and very cynical on all of that. And then when he gets out of the war, he doesn't go back to his mom. And in fact, even though he is now like this decorated soldier, he finds out that she lost the house, and now she's in this like ward for the impoverished, and he doesn't go back to be with her, mostly because he refers to her as always crying, and he kind of just like doesn't want to deal with it. And then even Jenny in the book, he fucks up their relationship in big ways twice.
Yeah.
And like the only thing that I find to be somewhat better is at the end he does realize that he fucked it up, and he and Jenny will never work out because of that. But like, with all of that being said, like, he's not the most likable person.
Everyone around him is more like, I like Dan in the book more than I like
love
Forrest.
Dan in the book.
That is such a good character. The arc that Dan goes through in the book, and it is sad. It is completely and utterly sad. I feel like there's no redemption for Dan in the book. I mean, at the end, he's working for, Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, even though it's not called Bubba Gump. Bubba's not included in it at all. It's just the Gump Shrimp Company. I have to remember that. Whatever. Even though he's like working for him towards the end, it's kind of just like, okay, and that's where he's at. You know what I mean? Like, there's no, he doesn't have his come full circle moment like the movie makes it out to be, but he is still, I think, of all the characters that translate from book to the movie, Dan, especially towards the middle of the book, where he is like very, disenchanted with the world post-Vietnam, that is still the Dan that we see in the movie.
Yes.
So I think he's the only character that had a successful, adaptation of himself, really.
Yeah, and he's a fun character because he gets broken. I mean, he just sounds like a good guy when they're in the war together. Then afterwards, he is kind of broken. He's kind of given up on life, but not fully. And his entire worldview went from one that was fairly positive to just kind of cynical. And then he is just trying to get like fast money and trying to figure out ways for him and Forrest to get fast money without having like full jobs. But there's nothing to... You still know that he's a good guy inside, and that it's just the world that treated him poorly.
Yeah. And once again, another genie in the teapot, Forrest Gump becomes a professional wrestler. Just wanted to make sure we mentioned this. Or semi-professional wrestler. Okay, so let me just, for everyone who hasn't read the book, let's lay this out. Forrest Gump with an IQ of 75 is he's a college football player, which is where he discovers he's an idiot savant because he's super amazing at math. Then he is a war hero, decorated war hero, an astronaut, a ping pong player, a chess player, a semi almost movie star, a professional wrestler. Well, was he the wrestler before the chess player? Yes. He was a wrestler,
Yes.
chess player, movie star, shrimping guy, then a homeless musician.
Right.
Is that right? Is that it?
Yeah.
I just needed
Yeah.
that. I just needed everyone to understand what the trajectory of this book is.
And throughout all of that, through all of what he goes through, it is repeatedly the scenario where he's getting taken advantage of.
Yeah.
When he is younger, and this is like one of the most cringeworthy moments, is this older woman, like, kind of reels him in with like sweets, like candy, and then she tells him to close his eyes and she starts touching him. She's molesting him.
Yeah.
And he's confused by it. And then with the football, he is taken in by, I think he calls them the goons, and they just kind of work the system enough where even though he shouldn't be in school and he shouldn't have good grades, they work it out because he's actually 6'6". He's like huge, and they call him, like, he has a body of an Adonis. That they rig it so that even though he isn't qualified enough to be in school, that they can still use him for football. And then with the military, they just kind of take him in and they force him to be in the military. And it's not even just like the draft thing. It's like they know that he is like this big guy, so they use him there. And then with the wrestling, he's being used by the producer of the wrestling show because he's so big and they want to make money off of him. It's just like over and over and over again, he's getting used by other people.
Did you find it weird? Because this is something that I found extremely weird, especially with like when he is being molested at the beginning of the book, and when he sleeps with Jenny, when he goes to the army recruitment place, when the doctors are looking at him and he's solving all those math problems and stuff. Anytime a woman sees him, it's like this over sexualization of Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Because that was when he's being checked out by all these doctors when they, find out he's an idiot savant, and she's the one who says, "My God, you have like the body of an Adonis." And like even Jenny, when she first sees Forrest, I guess naked, they don't describe him as being nude in front of her, but even she's all like, "Oh my God, Forrest, where have you been all my life?" And it's like,
Yeah.
And it was like very awkward for me to read these pages because yeah, he's constantly being taken advantage of because he seems like, I feel the way this book is written, I think maybe that's where my disconnect was between the way they describe Forrest looking and how everyone's reacting to him and the way he's speaking. He talks like Goofy, from the, like Mickey's friend, Goofy, everybody. And you know what? Now that I think about it, Goofy is also like 6 foot something or other. And he's probably, he would probably be muscular. I don't know. Think about Goofy. And then like everyone's just like, "Oh my God, that's the body of an Adonis." Like,
But you just made me go from thinking about how Jenny essentially says he's got a big dick to now thinking about Goofy. And I don't want to think about Goofy that way.
But like think about like the way some of his words are. I mean, he also uses some very ridiculous racial, like he uses words I won't repeat when talking about like being in Vietnam and playing football in the South. I will not say any of those words. I mean, but some of the stuff that is written, the way Groom writes this, anytime Forrest says ask, it's ax. And anytime he should say we were, he always says like we was. And he's purposely putting this caricature of a very dumb Southern person into this book when honestly, when I was reading it, I know Forrest has an IQ of 75. I know that he is not, the brightest bulb in the box. You didn't have to write it this way. Mm-hmm. Like, I felt like that was a grotesque overuse of the idea. Like, we didn't need, you hit the nail on the head in the first chapter. I don't need you to continuously remind me of the shortcomings of this character. And then I also do not need you in every single chapter to have Forrest at some point say, I gotta pee. It's not a catchphrase. It's not fun. First time, it's cute. Second time, you're like, ooh, cringe. Every single chapter. Anytime someone asks Forrest, well, what do you want? And he's always like, oh, I gotta pee. And you're like, I can't. I can't. He said it in the football stuff. He says it to the president. He says it in Vietnam. Oh, God, I never want to hear that line again. I know you said it at the beginning of the podcast. That's the last time I'm hearing it.
The problem with the book, there's a few, but like there's a conflict with Forrest because he says that the way he speaks isn't what is in his head, that there is a disconnect that occurs between his thoughts and what he says. So he may not actually be that, quote unquote stupid, like people call him. He might just not be able to express himself. And in a way, when I read that, I understand that too, because sometimes when I am speaking, particularly in large groups of people, like there's something that happens to me where I just start kind of like bumbling over my. I mean, even if it happens on this podcast where you ask me a question, I'm like, like I can't. I don't know. It's just like I get shell shock or something.
Yeah. Well, you and I have the same issue where it's like on the spot questions. If we can prepare in advance. Totally fine. If you were to ask me a question right now out of the blue, I'd go, and then I'd make Jesse cut that little bit out so it sounds like we're really smart.
It would actually be more interesting if the writing was coming from his point of view and it was somewhat decent, but then when he speaks that way, because that would show that the way he thinks and the way he speaks, there's just this difference between the two. Because there's even like, I didn't really like the way that the book is structured. And there's a part when he is in school and he has a writing teacher who asks everybody to write their autobiographies. And then the teacher hates everybody's except for Forrest. And he's like, you're able to take your life and just make it so interesting and unique and funny. And he loves his writing. And I thought, why isn't that the book? Why didn't he just start doing his autobiography for this teacher? That's the beginning of the book. And then he just decides to continue it throughout. That would be so much more interesting and a better way to structure the book than this kind of like mess.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I think that because Forrest says a lot of the time, when people are because a lot of people make fun of him throughout the whole thing. And he's like, I know when you're calling me a half-wit, I know when you're calling me a doofus, but that's not me. I'm not the idiot.
Right.
And like you said, I think it would have been a much stronger book if when Forrest is talking to himself in his head, he is talking to himself the way he wants to be represented. And when he's speaking to other people, he can say acts and we was. But in his head, I feel like Forrest doesn't see himself as dumb. And I don't want to see Forrest as dumb. You know what I mean? Like I'm looking for the good in Forrest, but we weren't given enough of him. We were just given what everyone thinks of him.
There were problems for me with whether or not I should think something's funny. Like, did you feel yourself feeling uncomfortable with that?
Yes. I don't think I honestly laughed at anything in this book.
The first time I laughed, and it was a good laugh too, is he says that his dad died by being crushed by a bunch of boxes of bananas. Which of course that's kind of funny. And then later on he's talking about, mama would make me lunches for school. And he says, just a sandwich, some fruit, but not bananas. I don't know. Like the fact that they didn't have bananas because that's how his dad died. Like that kind of made me laugh. But then there were like portions where he's talking about what he says is the nut school where they sent all of the kids with learning disabilities. And it's written like I should think this is funny. And I didn't think it was funny. I'm like, this is a poor attempt at humor. This isn't are you daring me to laugh at kids who are either disadvantaged or have these disabilities? Like, I don't understand what the writers asking me to do right now as an audience member?
Well, I felt that way too when he was in China for the ping pong tournament. And
Right.
he was supposed to go to that restaurant. And he took a cab. He forgot the note that said the name of the restaurant on it. And he's trying to talk to his cab driver, and one of the things that he says that he does is he like flaps his arms because the restaurant was something about a bird or something, and his driver brings him to the airport. And I feel like the entire exchange with him in that car was supposed to be funny, but I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
no. No, please. Like, that's where I agree with you. Like, if he had done some editing, I mean, the worst part about it, the worst one, I think, the one that I think we were all supposed to find really funny was when he's the astronaut, and they crash, and the female astronaut starts a relationship with yeah. I was like, no, this is not funny. I don't find the humor in this. I want this to stop.
There's a lot of like sexism in the book too, because when they decide to make him an astronaut, and it's such a leap in logic. You're already expected to swallow some things that don't make much sense, but you can believe that someone like Forrest is going to go into war. You can believe that maybe he's going to get drafted into football. All of that, like, okay, I'm on board. Even the chess thing's fine, but making him go in on a space mission is just so stupid. And they have this, gorilla named Sue, and then it turns out that they got the wrong gorilla, and it's a male gorilla instead. And the joke is that they're sending a gorilla, a woman, and Forrest. So it's supposed to be, this dumb animal, a woman, and a guy with an IQ of 70 something. Yeah. And that it was so insulting that the woman was supposed to be just as inconsequential as the other two idiots in the, ship. And then Forrest is just annoyed by the woman the whole time because she's basically the smartest. Well, she is the smartest one.
She's the only astronaut.
Right. She's an actual astronaut. She has all of the qualifications, and she's annoyed that she's on the ship with them. He refers to her as being old. It's, all the same stuff, that she's nasty, like all the same misogynistic ways that you would explain a woman who is rightfully upset at where she's at in life. And it's just so dismissive of her. And I don't know. It was bullshit.
Well, yeah. Well, there's also a part where the whole space part of the book, I wish you could see my face. The whole space part of the book was not necessary. It didn't need to happen. It felt clunky. Let's get real. It was clunky and awful. And there's a part in it where they find out that they have the wrong ape on the ship, and she doesn't want to go anywhere near it because it's an aggressive male instead of the soft female that they were supposed to be bringing. They've never trained with this, all the logical things. And Forrest, at one point while they're on the ship, is getting mad at her because she is, the ape named Sue. Sue is freaking out about something, and Forrest is like, he says that, oh, well, they haven't let Sue out to do anything. That's probably why Sue's getting all mad. And Forrest goes to pee, and then Sue gropes the female astronaut. And it is it's very awkward to read. They're literally saying that the way it's written is said that the ape sticks his hands down her pants, and she's freaking out about it, and she's trying to call the space station, and Forrest is like, well, if you let him out of the cage, it wouldn't be so weird. And it's like, oh, no. We're not about to make apologies for what is happening on this ship. I am sorry. I do not like this. I did not like the space chapter, okay? I'm just going to start calling it what it is, a genie in a teapot, and I don't want to deal with it. It was...
Sorry, I do want to apologize to gorillas. I accidentally called Sue a gorilla. Sue is an ape. My apologies.
For all of our gorilla fans out there, apologies. I'm sure people who are listening to this are like, wait, what? I know that we're jumping around a lot, but that's because that's what happens in this book. Like, I do not know how to make this book clear for anyone who never read it. I mean, I'm going to try right now, okay? Forrest, I can't even do it. Forrest is, you know, he gets arrested a lot too. Let's not forget that. He gets arrested the first time for accidentally groping Jenny. And that's when he is told he has to join the army or go to college. And the college brings him, he flunks out of college because he didn't do phys ed or something. They make it out like, oh, you're so dumb you couldn't even do this one thing that doesn't require anything. Then he is sent back to the army, goes to Vietnam, comes back, finds Jenny in Boston, joins her band, starts sleeping with her, then gets kicked out of the band because he fooled around with 2 other girls, finds her in DC, throws his medal at that guy, gets arrested again, gets told he's going to space, goes to space. This is the stupidest, 6 degrees of separation I've ever played. Goes to space, lands in the woods, where they're in a, as they described, cannibal encampment for 4 years.
That's problematic too.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, if Disney can clean up the Jungle Cruise ride, Groom can clean up this book. After 4 years there, he finds Jenny and Dan, and they go to the place where Jenny's living. That's when he becomes a wrestler. He plays the dunce, and Jenny is very mad at him for that.
He's wearing a diaper and it's got a dunce cap on his head.
Yeah, it's a bad look. Let's get real. It's bad for him. He makes a lot of. It's a bad look for anybody. Makes a ton of money, loses all the money, wants to go home, finds an old man who does chess because he learned chess from the head of the cannibal encampment. Finds the old man who brings him out to California, where then he also tests for a movie with Raquel Welch, who he ends up getting naked. Then gets arrested and then goes to Louisiana where he meets Bubba's dad. He starts growing his own shrimp so he can start a shrimping business. Runs for government. I'm sorry. This just keeps getting worse. It doesn't make sense. He runs for government. They find out about all of his prior arrests and all the weird stuff that he did, like throwing the medal and all that stuff. Drops out, decides to leave the business, goes to Georgia where he is a homeless harmonica player in the square in Savannah with Sue, the ape. And that is how the book ends.
Yeah. And it's the same thing where Jenny does have a kid and it's Forrest's kid. But they just agree that they're not together, that she's with some other guy.
The trajectory.
She does not die.
Yeah. The trajectory that Forrest takes in this book is not linear whatsoever. None of it makes sense. There is no way you can A to B to C this thing. You know what I mean? There is no logical explanation for some of the things that happened. And it hurts my brain to think about it. My head hurts really bad because I am trying to make sense of what Forrest does. And I feel like my main computer is spazzing out. And it's just does not compute. I've got smoke coming out of my ears.
The book is not a long book. It's pretty short and just volume size. And when he goes from place to place, there's not even much of it'll just be he is doing one thing and then it'll be well, now I found myself talking to these men, and then boom, he's in space. It might be 2 or 3 sentences between each of these different events, and they're neither interesting nor funny. So if you're doing it just in a surreal way where yes, it's tongue-in-cheek, yes, we know that this is asking you to believe something that's unbelievable, but it's not even funny. It's not interesting. It's not giving me anything to chew on. It's just nonsense.
Yeah. I think that's, if this had had a little bit more meat to it, a little bit more, something a little bit more sensitive, a little bit funnier, kind of like Who Censored Roger Rabbit, where before we get to the genie part, you and I both really liked the book. There was so much to dig
Yeah.
into. But with Forrest Gump, it feels like every chapter is a genie. And you don't get deep enough into anything to really understand him and understand the people around him, because it's true, he's kind of, honestly, even though he gets taken advantage of a lot, he's also kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't want to go home to his mom. He complains about her crying all the time. You know, he doesn't want, like, he thinks that Dan knows everything and that Jenny's just being a sensitive woman when she doesn't want him to wrestle. Like, there's a lot of stuff there when you're just kind of like, I really don't like what's happening here.
But it's also coming from like everybody. When he when he's doing the chess thing, they go to California, and then this director wants to hire him to play the creature from the Black Lagoon, and Raquel Welch is, the new damsel in distress for it. So he ends up like pissing himself while on set dressed up like the creature, and then he accidentally once again like rips her dress, and Raquel Welch is naked, so they run away so that nobody can see her naked. Then Sue shows up again, and then they do this ridiculous walk from the like swamp area that they were filming through like Hollywood, and Raquel Welch has these two pom pom things that she's hiding, like a burlesque dancer doing a fan dance. She's hiding her front part when like she's walking up to somebody, and then she switches it to the back part as she's walking away from them. And I'm just reading it like, okay, so sure, Forrest might not understand how he can just walk back to the set and ask for help, but you're telling me that I'm also supposed to buy that Raquel Welch is doing this?
Yeah.
How stupid do you think she is? Like that wouldn't happen, period. And then the whole business when they go into like a shop and she thinks that she can just walk out with a dress on. Like, you really think that this would happen? This is ridiculous. And it's not funny. Like, and I've said this before where I like watching bad movies, but I like a bad movie that makes me laugh. So watching The Room is a lot of fun for me. I enjoy it. But I don't like watching bad comedy. Bad comedy is just cringeworthy. It makes me feel uncomfortable, like physically uncomfortable. And when I read that, I felt uncomfortable. It's not funny. It's not realistic. There's no moral to this. It's just stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt like a Benny Hill sketch, and it just didn't work. I don't know. I wish, honestly, I would love to sit down with the groom and be like, so why? Like, what is the point? And I mean, I guess when you're looking at the book as a whole, everything that we're being told is from Forrest's perspective. So maybe that's his excuse, is that, well, this is how Forrest remembered it going versus how it actually went. And if that's the case, okay, I can understand that, but I still need a little bit more justification for why Forrest would tell me they ran through Hollywood with a naked Raquel Welch and Sue just happened to be there filming a Tarzan movie. Like, it just, even in Forrest's own mind, I don't think that these would play out, like these events would play out the way that they do in the book.
No.
Oh, this book. There's like so much in this book that just bothered me and irked me. The racist nicknames he uses for a lot of different people. Like, I don't want to go into it, but that bothered me. I don't know, just everything. The whole thing with Sue, like, why do we need this? Like, what is happening, groom? Tell me why.
And Sue is another part where I can imagine this working. I can imagine a book where this actually is something poignant, where while during that 4-year period where they're with the cannibals and he is speaking with Sue, who, as a reminder, is a male ape, and they are able to understand each other and they start to talk to one another. And he finds out Sue's whole life, and it's really sad because Sue was taken, Sue's been forced to be in cages and stuff, and his whole life was really sad. And like there's something there. There's some sort of something where perhaps, Forrest and Sue, they see one another and they see how both of them are seen by others as threats, and they both have these sad lives where they were just taken away and abused and used for other people's wants and desires without anybody actually asking them what they want. And that is something that when you think about like the American dream, I'm so giving so many like I'm giving a lot here. Okay. When you think about the American dream and how people, like, the American dream's a fallacy, and to think about how many people are used and just tossed out repeatedly, and how people higher up in a lot of different areas look down upon others as like, oh, that's just like the dumb American, and how you've got this ape and it's being used. There's something there.
Yeah.
But it's not successful.
Yeah, I don't think Groom went deep enough to give us that,
No.
But see, that's where
I'm giving the benefit of the doubt a lot.
Yeah. I think that, like, I agree with you. I think that he is trying to give us that, and he misses the mark completely. There's a part of the book where I feel like Groom is trying to explain his point and explain his purpose and almost apologize for some of the stuff that's going on. And that's when Forrest takes he sits in on that class in Harvard. Right? Was it in Harvard where he's at?
Yes.
Yeah, and they're talking about like the village idiot, and nobility would have a court jester, and like all of this stuff about how the idiot has a purpose. And I feel
well, it's the idiot in literature, and the idiot's journey in literature going back from, Shakespeare to present day.
I feel like that sums up what he's trying to say in this book, is that the idiot has a purpose. But he's not giving Forrest a purpose. He's having purpose thrust upon Forrest, but Forrest doesn't give Forrest the deeper understanding to see that this is what he should be doing. It's just a lot of Forrest being told this is what you have to do. And I think that Groom really misses the mark on if that part of the book making, like, because it was a really big part, talking about the class and talking about how the role of the idiot in literature, was needed. If you're going to make that such a big part of your book and it almost feels like it's an apology to the entire book, then maybe, I don't know, use the information you provided in that chapter to make a fully rounded character that I can understand and really want to get to know. That's all I'm asking for.
Right.
It's not much. It's not like I asked you for $1 million. Like, come on.
No, that's exactly it. It's a perfect way to explain it.
I, before reading this book, when I was checking it out from the library, because I did have reservations about purchasing this book, so I checked it out from the library, and I almost checked out the sequel to Forrest Gump. And I was like, oh, hold on, what is Gump and Company? And then I had to do a deep dive into, like, what is going on. There are 3 Forrest Gump books.
Yep.
Why?
And again, this is the funny thing with it's another parallel to Who Censored / Framed Roger Rabbit, where the author, after the movie is made, goes back and does a sequel and kind of bridges the differences between the book and the movie in the sequel.
I did read that in the sequel, Forrest meets Tom Hanks, so I can only imagine how that meeting goes. Should I read the sequel to Ready Player One. Should I read the sequel to Forrest Gump?
Listen, if you want to continue your masochistic path with book reading, be my guest.
I feel like it's a curse.
I may not
once
partake.
It's started, I have to keep going. I must see the curse
Nikki,
through.
you're hurting yourself. You're hurting yourself. We need to do an intervention.
Somebody help me stop reading sequels because it's just not going to end well for me.
It's a cry for help.
It really, yeah. If any of you see me reading Gump and Company, please call my mom. Like, hey, are you okay? You want to talk about it?
I just see it like these documentaries about serial killers, and it's just like a photo of you holding the book. But dark times were ahead.
Oh, great. I can't wait to be on Oxygen. I love that channel. I really don't know what else we can say about this book. It is convoluted. It is insane. I just don't. It's like he started every chapter as if it were the start of the book. And he was just like, I don't know, we'll see where this goes. And then he was like, let's just put them all together as one book. I don't know. I don't know where to go with this book.
Yeah, I think it's time to move to the movie.
Yeah. I love this movie. I am a dad. I love this movie.
Yeah, so the book was adapted into the 1994 film Forrest Gump, directed by Robert Zemeckis, written by Eric Roth, starring Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, Gary Sinise, Sally Field, and McKelty Williamson, who people will remember from Are Waiting to Exhale.
Yes.
And unfortunately, his career is defined by Bubba Gump, so
yeah.
he did not get many roles after. But that's where we're at now.
But you know what? If that were my defining role, I think I'd be okay with it.
He's great.
He's great. Amazing.
I'll say that from the out. Yeah, I'll say that from like the very beginning. All of the acting I think is pretty stellar. Yeah. I think everybody is, doing their best.
Yeah. The cast for this movie is, I don't have a problem with anybody in this movie. The soundtrack for this movie snaps all around. I love it. It's all the best American classic songs that you could want to listen to. It's so good. I don't know. The movie is, maybe it's just because it is such a dad film. Like, I can remember anytime it was on TV, my dad was watching this movie. And that is something that he has gifted to me because Christina told me last night before recording this. Christina was like, you know Forrest Gump is on VH1 right now, right? And even though I had already watched it for this podcast, and even though I have seen this movie 100 times, I still put it on and watched it again and cried.
The movie goes beyond just a movie. It's a pop culture, phenomenon. This was one of the movies that I remember as a kid, my parents going like opening night. And I want to say, because when I was a kid, part of my, growing up was on an Air Force base in England. And I feel like we were there when the movie came out. And I remember waiting in like the car because they were getting tickets and there was a line. Like, it's the first time I remember a big movie opening that my parents went to.
Yeah. See, that's cool. I can imagine this being very popular on Army bases. Because the war portion in the movie takes up a majority of the film, and it is
Yeah.
Do you cry when you watch Forrest Gump? Can we just get this out of the way right now? Do you cry when you watch this movie?
I do, and it annoys me.
Okay, I'm so glad I'm not alone. I cry a lot. Okay, people who know me, I cry all the time. I could cry at anything. Happy
Yeah.
tears, sad tears, angry tears. I'm a crier. I like to release my emotions. Forrest Gump makes me ugly sob as if I had just watched Coco. Like, cannot control it. Like, literally, there are multiple scenes that I am just a wreck. When Bubba dies, don't talk to me, okay? I've got to feel my feelings. I'm about to cry right now. When Forrest says to Jenny, God, I'm gonna cry. Jesse's laughing at me because I'm tearing up right now. When Forrest says to Jenny, I may not be a smart man, but I know what love is.
You know what part that gets me? It's when he sees little Forrest.
Oh my God.
And then he says, is he smart or is he... And then he just puts his hand on his chest.
Yeah.
You know, suggesting, like, is he smart or is he like me? That part gets me pretty good.
I might be crying.
God, you're crying.
I might be crying just a little bit because that's the part where if you look at Tom Hanks' eyes when he says that part, like his eyes get all like teary and glossy looking, and it's just like, oh Lord Jesus. And then from that point to like basically the end of the movie, I just start crying. I'm a mess. I can't help it. Like, I don't want to cry. It's not like I plan it. It's just like he says a couple things and he looks a certain way, and I'm just like, okay. Tears every time.
Forrest Gump for me is, we had it on VHS. I watched it all the time when I was a kid, teenager. And had you asked me at that point, like, oh, you know, do you like Forrest Gump? I'd be like, yeah, I love Forrest Gump. Of course, everybody loves Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
And now, like, for this podcast was the first time I watched it from beginning to end in probably, I don't know, 11 years, 12 years.
Yeah.
And I just found myself upset. It's like the movie is well directed. Of course, the music is good, both the score and the soundtrack. The acting is all stellar. The special effects, you know, they're all like groundbreaking. It's really well done. It's, you know, the kind of stuff that I like, that Zemeckis and like David Fincher, like they do this stuff where it's a lot of special effects in just a drama film. It's not special effects for, you know, a Fast and Furious or whatever. But just what the fuck is this movie saying? What is it saying? It just feels like one of the reasons why people like this movie is, of course, the soundtrack. There's like 5 songs from The Doors, but it's just so heavy-handed. It's like when Jenny is leaving the abusive boyfriend, she looks in the mirror and sees a black eye, as the lyric from Love Her Madly is, don't you love her face? And then as she's walking out the door, it's the lyric, don't you love her as she's walking out the door? And I'm like, are we really doing this right now? And it feels kind of like when it's like the millennial woo. It's the reason why people all think that music sounds this. You did it. It's when people say oh, music all sounds the same right now, there's a reason why, because it does all sound the same. There's something called the millennial woo, and it started, a lot of it, they like look back at Katy Perry. There's an actual sound that is now in the majority of top 40 songs where you immediately like the song because it has something that triggers in all of our little squirrel brains, and we hear it without understanding that we're hearing it. So it immediately sounds familiar and like we want to party and like we're having the best summer ever. And that's what Forrest Gump is.
Yeah.
I don't want to go on too much of a tirade here, but I don't know. It's just, it gives you everything that you want without actually giving you anything that you need.
Yeah.
It's going out and having barbecue, and of course you like it because it's all fat and butter and sugary sauce, without really nourishing you.
Well, yeah, it's a sterilized, nostalgia. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, they get so close to the awful stuff that is happening during each of those time periods, but they don't go far enough to tell you about it. And I think the biggest case of that is when, at the end of the movie, when Jenny tells Forrest that, spoiler alert for anyone who's never seen this movie, when Jenny tells Forrest that she's dying, that she has a disease, and the doctors don't really know what it is. At that time period, I mean, the assumption is, just like with Fight Club, the assumption is that it's AIDS or HIV, because Jenny throughout the movie is, you know, she's doing a lot of drugs, she's having a lot of promiscuous sex. Like, it is not that hard of a leap to see where they were going with her character, but they never have her explicitly state that that is what's happening. So it's that sterilized nostalgia of a period of time without having to get gross about it. Even in the war, when Forrest is in Vietnam, it is, we have that scene about the rain, which is such a classic scene, with all of the guys in their uniforms, and he's like, it was raining sideways and upways, and it was like, oh, that's so cute, that's funny. And then, like, the bombs fall, and then all of a sudden he gets shot, you know, he gets shot in the butt, and that's the end of it. Like, there's no... The book talks a bit deeper about what happens to some people in Vietnam than the movie showed.
Yeah, and like Lieutenant Dan, and this is like the thing too, Lieutenant Dan's probably my favorite in both the book and the movie. And I think that Gary Sinise is so good as Lieutenant Dan. There's something about him where he's got this really like raw anger, but then he also is just kind of funny. Like when, I can't remember what the line is, you'll probably know it, but it's when he's on the boat and then he just lets the boat crash and then he goes over to Lieutenant Dan and he says something like, but you got no legs, and he's like, I know that, Forrest. Like, it's just it makes me laugh. And but at the same time, they kind of vilify him. Whereas in the book, you understand how difficult life is for Lieutenant Dan and how he was this like good person, a good soldier, and then he just kind of spat out of the military system, you know, disabled and trying to make money where he can. Yeah. There's like the part when in the movie they're crossing the street and Gary Sinise yells like, I'm living off the government. And I'm like, are you trying to say that it's his fault? And then at the end when he's like magically now like looking very conservative looking and he's standing and he's got his lady friends, like, so was it his fault the whole time then? Are you saying that he was lazy? What are you trying to tell me with this?
Yeah, I think that, because with the book, what the book does for Dan's character is that, and I'm not calling him Lieutenant Dan when I talk about the book, because that is not, he's not a lieutenant in the book. I don't think he was. Anyways, semantics. When we're talking about him in the book, you get a deeper understanding of what the soldiers coming back from Vietnam really dealt with, which is there was no safety net. There's still, when you think about the Army today, there still isn't really a safety net for a lot of people who are coming back and suffering from PTSD and who are, you know, wounded warriors and things like that. And especially at that time, because there is a part in the book where Dan talks to Forrest about what it's like for him now, because he used to be a professor of like theology and stuff, and he says that when he went back home, his wife had left him for a man with legs, that he couldn't get to his classes because they put his classroom on like the second floor and he couldn't get up there, and that in order for him to go to the bathroom he had to pee in a shoe and dump that out into a toilet. And you're reading this and you're like, that's why I think Dan was such a good character in the book, and the only really good character in the book. You feel for him. And that translates into the movie, but once again, it is so sterilized in the movie that you're not seeing as much of the negativity that Dan has to face. You're not seeing the negativity that Forrest has to face. In the book, Forrest comes back from Vietnam and he gets assaulted by protesters. it's not really a thing in the movie. He's still considered a war hero. Everything Forrest does comes up roses in the movie, but you're not seeing all the dirt beneath the surface.
No, and then, like, I think probably the most interesting character in the entire movie is Jenny.
Yeah.
And Jenny has just such a tragic story that, like, I would love to see Jenny's story from, A to Z, like, the whole thing. But again, it's like, are they trying to vilify her a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember people that you and I both know because we went to high school together, I remember my favorite history teacher in high school played Forrest Gump, and guys in class were making fun of Jenny and calling her a slut. And there's even the Weird Al Yankovic, like, the Gump song.
Oh, yeah.
Where he calls Jenny a slut. And, like, I don't know.
Well, I think...
I struggle with it.
And I think it's because of the fact that no one... In 1994, I don't think there was a lot of in-depth investigation into what happens to children of abuse. I don't think that was a way... I don't think there was a way for Robert Zemeckis to put forth on film the actualization of what somebody who's been abused for most of their childhood is really doing with their lives. Because there is a cut scene from the movie where young Jenny actually kills her father. You can see it on the DVD, the special edition.
Heavy.
Yeah, it's on the 25th anniversary, like, special edition DVD or whatever. I don't know if it's the 25th, but it's on one of the DVDs, if anyone out there has it. And it's Jenny releases the handbrake on the big mower machine or whatever for, like, their crop duster or whatever at the house, and it runs over her dad. When you think about that, and then you see the trajectory of Jenny's life, of course you're going to be a little bit messed up.
Yeah.
You were abused for most of your childhood, and then you killed your abuser. You can't put yourself in her shoes, And she's doing what she's doing the best she can with the knowledge that she had as a kid. The only way she knows how to survive is this one way. And I do think that she is vilified in both the book and the movie. Like, she comes out, like, she's painted in a negative light in the book when she decides that she wants to raise her son with another man who's not Forrest.
Right.
And Forrest is kind of, like, upset about it, but he's understanding of the situation. And then in the movie, she is vilified by making her die of a disease that she probably got by doing everything else during the course of the film. It's there's no win-win for her, and I understand that another part of it is probably, the quote-unquote hero's journey, where a woman in the hero's life has to be, raped or murdered or, attacked so that our hero can continue on to avenge it. You know what I mean? But, which happens a lot, mostly in, like, action films, but it seems to happen here too. It's just, the whole thing just feels off.
And the thing that annoys me about this is that I love watching Robin Wright as Jenny.
Yeah.
I think that her performance, and I mean, I get goosebumps when I think about the scene where she's contemplating suicide. And that scene is just shot so well. She looks so great when she's in that, like, disco outfit, and then she goes out onto the balcony. And then the one thing that's done so well is, like, when she puts out her foot and then the wind catches her foot and her shoe a little bit, and then she gets scared, and then she sits down, and you can actually see the goosebumps on her flesh because she's cold and scared, and she's kind of, like, shivering and rocking back and forth. Like, it's just so good, and you understand where Jenny's at. It's directed well. She's performing it well. It's all so good. And then I think, like, but are they doing her justice? Are they doing this character justice? I'm not too sure.
Yeah. I think if we are going to compare Jenny from the book to Jenny from the movie, I think they did more justice for Jenny in the movie because they actually gave her
I agree.
a hell of a lot more to to deal with. And they also gave her almost her own hero's journey, her own, odyssey, if you will. Like she has to build herself up into the woman that she wanted to be from the very beginning, and you get that. Although when you look at her compared to Forrest, she is one of the many villains in Forrest's life. Like, his goal is always to be with her, and her goal is to never be with him. Because she never thinks she's good enough, really.
Right. But are they rewarding Forrest for doing not like a lot? Like,
yes.
Like, Forrest is rewarded for being lucky and not ever taking a stance on anything ever.
Yeah. I think I both agree and disagree. He doesn't take a stance when it comes to the war. He doesn't take a stance when it comes to anything except for Jenny. That is he's never wanted anything from his life except to be with her. That was his only, that's the only thing he wants. It's like Harold and Kumar go to White Castle. They don't want to meet Neil Patrick Harris. They don't want to ride a tiger in the woods. They want to eat White Castle. All Forrest wants to do is be with Jenny. They are peas and carrots. That's all he was on. That was a bad analogy. Jesse's laughing at me.
I love it. You're stuck there. You made the bed, now you gotta lay in it.
It's warm, it's cozy. But that's what it feels like, is that he wants an A to Z, and everything else is just the in-between bits. Like his one main stance, the one thing that keeps him going is Jenny. All that other stuff was just luck and happenstance. But yeah, I think he takes a stand when it comes to being with Jenny, because anytime he sees her, anytime he notices that something is wrong with her, he wants to do everything he can for her. But he doesn't take that stance on anything else in his life. Like, even when he comes back from the ping pong tournament, and his mom's like, well, these people just want you to try out their ping pong paddles. And he's like, well, I like playing with mine. Yeah. And she's like, I know, but they sent this check if you just say it a couple times. And he does it. He even tells Bubba, he's like, but Mama said a little white lie won't hurt nobody. And it's like, that was a stance that was a soapbox you could have stood on and been like, no. But he's not going to. The only one he wants is Jenny.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite quote from Forrest Gump? Is that a weird thing to ask?
I don't know. I never thought about that, like a favorite.
I do.
Okay.
I guess maybe it's not a favorite quote. It's like my favorite part of the movie, bar none, is when Forrest is in the army hospital bed next to Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah.
And he goes, Lieutenant Dan, ice cream. Yeah. Lieutenant Dan. And he's shaking that ice cream cone. And then Dan takes the bedpan and puts the cone in the bedpan.
Yeah.
It is the perfect, because Gary Sinise doesn't say anything in this scene, and it is the perfect visual identifier of who Dan is as a whole. Vanilla ice cream in a bedpan. It kills me every time. I could just watch that scene on repeat, and every time I see it, I would laugh. If they put that as a commercial break, I would just laugh the whole time.
No, I don't know. I love Lieutenant Dan. I think he's like, I don't know, he's just my favorite. Yeah. He's so interesting, and but I don't want to be like the bummer here. It like, again, like, probably one of my favorite parts is when they're on the boat and Dan is yelling at God, and then they get all the shrimp, and then he is like, swimming in the ocean. And then Forrest, like, wonders if he made peace with God that day. Like, it just gets, like, weirdly religious for a character that I don't think is religious at all. And is that just, like, Forrest and his interpretation of what occurred? Is it Lieutenant Dan finally feeling that he has found some purpose after the war, that he's able to contribute and work with alongside Forrest. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't see it as Dan finding God, finding religion. I mean, even though, or actually we could look at it that way, because previous to Dan yelling at God, he starts going to the Baptist church.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be that he has spent up all of his anger at what has happened to him, which he had no say in, and he put a lot of that on the on the shoulders of a man upstairs, and decides to start going to church. I mean, there's so many ways to look at it. I would prefer to look at it the way that, you know, Lieutenant Dan has spent so much time being angry at everybody about what happened to him. He was mad about fighting in Vietnam. He was mad about the Vietnamese people, which he brings that up a lot too at the beginning. He's oh boy, howdy does he ever. He's mad at Forrest for saving his life because all of his family members have died in all those different wars. Which I also thought was just a great little throwaway thing in this movie. He's mad at everybody, but he never in the movie really looks at himself to wonder if a lot of that anger is just because now he doesn't feel like he has a place in society anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like we see him mad at everything else in the world, but when after he starts yelling to God, the last person he's decided to be mad at, it's like a release for him of all of that anger. And he's just like, I guess I don't have anyone else to be mad at anymore. Like,
Lost my steam.
Yeah, I done yelled at everybody. Like, but I will say that it doesn't matter like whether he found God or he just made peace. I think the best part about that is that Dan himself never changed, until the end. Like he's on the cover of that magazine with Forrest, and he still has that scraggly hair and like all of that. And I was like, thank God you've never changed.
I find things out about myself all the time, but it's like when he shows up at the end and he's all like clean cut and he's like looking good and healthy, I was like, ugh, he looks better with the longer hair. But I think it's just because my husband has longer hair. I just think that like every guy should have longer hair. And, like I was literally like, I'm watching it and trust me, I do not find Gary Sinise attractive. I just thought, like, no offense, Gary Sinise, if you're listening, no, you're a big fan. So when he shows up at the end, I was like, ooh, like go find that wig, put that back on. What are you doing?
Hey, Christina, can you stop offending our number one superstar fan, Gary Sinise? Okay, I know he listens to the podcast. Gary, give me a call. I'll apologize. Come over. We'll have coffee. Actually, we have two superstar listeners. In case anyone forgets, we do have Greta Gerwig's phone number.
Well, and don't forget all of the gorillas out there.
Oh yeah, this one's for you guys.
All of our gorilla listeners.
So many fans. Thank you. Rate, review, subscribe. Thank you. Where do we go from Gary Sinise now? I just feel like the ensemble for this film was perfect. And I found it so interesting. Like, I already knew a bit of trivia about this film because I've seen You've Got Mail. I mean, anyone who's seen You've Got Mail and read the trivia will know that Dave Chappelle was offered the role of Bubba and turned it down because he didn't think the movie was going to be good. And honestly, if I was offered the role of Bubba and then I read the book, I would probably also turn it down before getting the script. You know what I mean? Like, because in the book, he's really inconsequential to the overall thing. His only purpose is to give Forrest a harmonica and teach him to play so that Forrest can become That's another thing that drove me nuts about the book, is that Forrest has to be better than the person who taught him how to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, God,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
irked me. Whereas in the movie, Bubba is really someone that Forrest can lean on because I think Bubba replaces the role of Sue from the book. Like, where Sue and Forrest, the book, have an understanding because
Yes.
they're so looked down upon by everyone. That's what Bubba and Forrest are in the movie. And their friendship is so endearing and so sweet. And when Bubba, spoiler alert, dies, it is just like, it is heartbreaking for everybody. And the fact that, Forrest carries on his name is just so sweet. I just want to let you know, if you and I ever had to fight in Vietnam, I would carry you to the woods if you died and then name our podcast after you. My next podcast, my shrimp boat podcast.
Oh, thank you. And by the way,
Yeah.
the actor that played Bubba Gump, apparently he is asked a lot.
His last
he owns
name
Bubba
isn't
Gump
Gump.
Shrimp Company.
His last name isn't Gump.
Yeah.
You called it.
What did I say?
You said the actor. You said that. Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
Bye,
interrupt
everybody.
you, but
I'm done.
You said the actor who plays Bubba Gump. I'm sorry. I didn't realize they got married
You
in the
don't remember-
movie. I missed that part.
Yeah, you don't remember the groundbreaking gay marriage that occurs in the 1990s? The film from the 1990s? Yeah, no.
Sorry. It's like you watched Philadelphia and you were like, oh wait, there's also gay marriage in this one too.
No, so Bubba, the actor who played Bubba, is constantly asked if he owns the Bubba Gump restaurants, and he's like, fuck no. And he refuses to eat there because they're owned by an oil company.
And I support that. I support that 100%.
Yeah.
I hate the Bubba Gump stores and restaurants. There's a huge one in Times Square, and they have a costume mascot that is a shrimp that I always found bizarre. Like, why would a shrimp want to advertise a restaurant where its friends are dying? I don't get it.
Yeah, that's strange.
And I remember when those things first became a thing, too. When people were really jazzed about it, like, oh my God, they're making a restaurant based off of Forrest Gump. Like, that's how in the zeitgeist Forrest Gump is. That we now have a restaurant that's based off of a fake company from a movie. There's that. There's also, I mean, I'm sure you must have heard it 100 times. Anytime a kid was running to the bus anywhere between 1994 and like the year 2000, if one kid didn't open up that bus window and go, run, Forrest, run, I mean, did you really live in the mid to late 90s? Like,
yeah.
Or anytime someone made, I can remember a teacher, no, I don't think it was, I think it might have been a college professor who did this. Somebody asked a really dumb question, and I can remember him saying, well, stupid is as stupid does. And everyone lost their minds, thought it was so funny. And I was like, oh my God, are we really still doing Forrest Gump? Is that real? Come on, you guys, it was years ago. Like, there's that one, there's, life is like a box of chocolates. Like, it's just so ingrained in everything we do now. Ugh.
Yeah, I was reading an article about Forrest Gump in pop culture, and they were comparing it to Borat, saying like Forrest Gump was the verbal meme that people had, prior to the internet being so big, and everybody quoted it, everybody knew it, and it's turned into this kind of, cultural icon and a joke that, because everybody has seen that movie, like everybody gets the joke.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, like, Run, Forrest, Run was the first, my wife. Like, Forrest Gump paved the way for this sort of stuff. Like, we appreciate, I mean, just like they say in the book, like, you need the idiot. And that's what we associate with.
Here's the difference. both Borat films are risky and they take a stance and they are
Yeah.
clearly showing some of the bad stuff in America that needs to be corrected, and it takes a stance on the basic idea of racism. Don't be racist. This is the bad thing about racism. Don't do it. But it's still a movie that I can watch and I can laugh at and I think it's really funny, but it also makes me feel uncomfortable in a good way, where it's like, yeah, this is a problem and this needs to be corrected. Where Forrest Gump, the movie, it doesn't even take a stance on the fact that he's named after a KKK member.
Yeah.
And that guy was a huge butcher and mutilated people. And it's extremely ambiguous as to whether or not his mom was racist. Did she name him to teach him, like, don't do that, or did she do it in honor of that guy? You don't know. Like, Sally Field is extremely likable, but she might be a racist. We're not too sure.
Yeah, I mean, because they also have a housemaid, which is what Bubba's mom was,
Right.
too. And Forrest gives her all that money so she never has to do it again. Which is a great... When Bubba's mom gets that money and gets her a white housemaid, snaps all around.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful scene. I love it. And she's living on that weird, like, beautiful looking, like, golf course community. She deserves it. But it's true, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
like we said, Forrest Gump doesn't take a stand either way on anything. You know, the movie is very, like, the movie is the nostalgia for like boomers. You know, like, oh, remember all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like the music.
Yeah.
Remember Elvis Presley? Like that is what the movie's made for a generation that we are not, you know, like we can sometimes be very cynical and very critical. I mean, that's why we have a podcast. But I think, you know, for the boomers, it was more like, let's just forget some of that stuff and move forward.
I think it's interesting that Robert Zemeckis, with the aesthetic of the film, was largely inspired by Norman Rockwell.
Yeah.
And Norman Rockwell paintings. And I pulled up the biography of Norman Rockwell from the Smithsonian, and here are some of the little, like, bits that I saw in the biography, and I'm like, I wonder what that sounds like. Overly sweet, broadly popular in American culture. His work tended toward idealistic or sentimentalized portrayals of American life. And it's just like, well, you can use all of those to describe Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was interesting because I'm looking through all of the paintings that are extremely similar to shots from Forrest Gump. And then I came across the painting that Rockwell did, The Problem We All Live With. And it's the painting of the little 6-year-old black girl, Ruby Bridges, and she's surrounded by these white guys going into the all-white school. And that's the painting that was in the White House when the Obamas were there. It's pretty famous. And they do have the scene in the movie where it's the black students going into the school. But the huge difference is that when you look at the Rockwell painting, which was not liked by audiences at the time that he did it, they actually called it a traitor to the white race. The painting has the girl, and behind her it's the N-word, and the KKK is scrawled on the walls, and then you see tomatoes that were thrown at her, so it almost looks like blood on the wall, like, behind it, and it's extremely dark and grim. But in the movie, all it is nice Forrest Gump from Alabama picking up the book for her.
Yeah.
And I know it's not the same person, it's a different person, but it's the same type of situation. And that's, like, what bothers me. It's like, even Rockwell, who was very sanitized and did show America's, like, how great it is, did war propaganda artwork, that he did have these other paintings that had a little bit more of saying to it and saying, like, this is a problem, we need to think about this. And people didn't like it. People didn't like those paintings. They wanted the happy stuff. And then that scene is also, like, happy.
Yeah. I mean, do you think a lot of the sterilization was at the hands of Zemeckis, or do you think maybe
Yes.
some of it was because of Tom Hanks?
I don't think it's Tom Hanks. I think it's Zemeckis, because he even said that this movie is a bottle that everybody can drink from.
Yeah.
So it's a feel-good movie. It's macaroni and cheese. It's something that everybody's going to like. Unless certain people think too hard about it. And unfortunately, I'm always thinking too hard about things.
I think we're the people who are like, it's COVID, we don't want to share a bottle with you.
Right.
I think we're going to open up our own bottle and enjoy it ourselves.
No, I mean, there is the Tom Hanks thing. And, like, Tom Hanks is in that same crowd with, Will Smith, Julia Roberts. We talked about the Julia Roberts effect in the Eat, Pray, Love episode, where I like Julia Roberts, period.
Yeah.
I like her. She can be in a movie that I don't necessarily like, and I like her. And the thing with Forrest Gump is I like most of the music that plays. I really like Tom Hanks. Everybody likes Tom Hanks. But...
My mom doesn't like Tom Hanks.
And that tricks me into enjoying it. Oh, that's right. I do know of that about your mom.
Yeah.
She doesn't trust him, right?
Yeah, it's she thinks he's too nice. She thinks there has to be something off. He's too nice. So apologies to our sorry, Gary Sinise. Apologies to our number one fan, Tom Hanks, who I'm sure listens to every episode of this podcast. Please help me convince my mom that you are awesome. But when you were talking about the Norman Rockwell paintings and you were like how the description of all of those paintings really covers Forrest Gump, the description of those paintings covers Tom Hanks as a person. Like think about it. Like every movie he's ever done, what's like the darkest things that he's probably ever done is probably Band of Brothers, and even like I think I've
never watched Band of Brothers.
Oh my God, it's so good. It is really, really good.
I know.
Really good.
Yeah.
That should have been your COVID watch. You should have watched every episode of Band of Brothers.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
I fucked up.
I grew up in a stereotypical household where the dad watches a lot of war, which explains so much about my life. All we ever watched was Turner Classic Movies, the History Channel, and ESPN. So... that's me in a nutshell.
No, this is me in a nutshell. Help me out. Help me out.
Help me. I'm in a nutshell. Why wasn't Austin Powers a book? Gosh darn it. What I also found really interesting, going over the trivia for Forrest Gump though, is that Bill Murray, John Travolta, and Chevy Chase all turned down the role of Forrest, which I don't see any of them ever being able to do Forrest Gump. But Groom really wanted John Goodman.
It makes no sense.
And see, this is where if the movie had come out, if the book was turned into a film with a fast turnaround like Mommy Dearest, where it was like a year later, I can see John Goodman doing it. Because in the 80s, John Goodman was just, he's tall, he's broad-shouldered, he looks like a football player, he was super muscular. Like, he could have definitely, he was the description of Forrest in the book, but I could never see anyone else playing this role. Not with the conviction of Tom Hanks.
Did John Goodman have the body of an Adonis?
I mean, should we look up some photos? Should I send you a photo of John Goodman?
I'm trying to look right now, and I don't see a body of an Adonis. No offense.
I mean, I don't know. He has to take his shirt off, right? Are there Did you Google shirtless photos John Goodman?
Okay, I already have such a weird Google history. I don't need to make it even weirder.
I mean, and you also have to remember...
this doesn't work. This does not work.
He has a lot of hair in the 80s. But you also have to remember he was from the South. He was from Louisiana.
Yeah.
And he did, I think he actually did play football. So he kind of had what I think they were looking for. But, I mean, honestly, I can't see any of those people as Forrest.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Forrest in the movie is, totally different. And I do like Tom Hanks. I like Tom Hanks.
I think
you got me, Hollywood.
Yeah, he brings this childlike wonder, which Tom Hanks brings this magnetism to everything that he does. My mom's gonna hate this episode. She's like, all you guys do is talk about Tom Hanks. He's our number one fan. I have to. But he really does have this wonderment about everything in the world that he's seeing, because, the understanding is that he is new to everything. Because because of his IQ, everything is supposedly brand new to him and his understanding of the world, and he's seeing it through fresh eyes. Like, almost like when two dogs meet each other on the street, it is this, I am just full of analogies on this one. It's just this joy about like when he sees Dan on that dock and he jumps off the boat and swims up to him. It is without a care in the world. He is just the happiest of happy people. When he sees Dan at his wedding to Jenny, and Dan has his magic legs, and you see the look in Tom Hanks' eye, I want to cry thinking about it. When you see the way his eyes gloss over, he's just like so proud of who Lieutenant Dan has become, And the two of them share that one moment where they're both looking at each other, and they both have this understanding of like, we've come so far, Oh God, I love it. Mm-hmm. Anyways, like, I don't think anyone else could have played the seriousness with the childlike wonder and the comedy that comes with being Forrest. Like, we've had this discussion about Bill Murray before. When was Bill Murray supposed to be in Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Was that the one?
Yes.
And we talked about how, because there was that scene where Eddie Valiant talks about his brother. And we both were like, he could definitely play up the comedy aspect of that film, but I don't know if he would be able to play the seriousness at that time. That's the same feeling I have about it with both him and Chevy Chase and John Travolta. I feel like they would all play up the idea of how he was in the book versus how he turns out in the movie.
Mm-hmm. See, where I've got some problems with, like I said, like Forrest Gump doesn't take a side on certain things, but I think that it's really successful in the movie the way that, because he does have this simple childlike view of things, he doesn't understand exactly what's occurring. So like when he sees Jenny and she's naked playing the guitar, at the bar, and he says something like, oh, her dream came true, she's famous, and it's just sad because you know that Jenny's not exactly up there like strong female woman deciding to do some burlesque and she feels good about herself. Jenny's there because she's being exploited, and Jenny's there because she's doing, what she can to get by, but this isn't like a strong moment for her. She's not exactly happy there, and she's not being treated right. And Forrest doesn't exactly understand that. He only understands that it's wrong when the guy is trying to touch her. And like, that's where the movie is. I like the way he is saying the story one way on that bench talking to all these people, and then when you see it as the audience member, you understand that something else is happening entirely.
Yeah.
I do like that.
I mean, overall, like, even though...
See, I said something positive.
Yeah, see, I'm so proud of you. You did it. I knew you could do it.
Thank you.
It's your one positive for the episode. Now you can be negative again. This is such a change because usually it's me who's like, I'm going to rain on everyone's parade. But
here's the thing. I like this movie. I like this movie. I would watch it again. If I am in my living room and I am dusting the fan blades and Forrest Gump is on, I'm going to throw it on.
Oh, see, that's my Twister. I watch Twister when I'm doing stuff like that. But, like,
It's a Twister.
It's a Twister. It's a Twister. Dorothy? Anyways, I feel like this, like, there's just something... For me, there's something nostalgic about Forrest Gump. And it's just the nostalgia of watching it at home, on my parents' couch, or, when I used to go visit my Nana and Grandpa, and, it would be on TV, and we could all watch it, and, my grandpa's going to talk a bunch of stuff about Vietnam, and I really don't want to listen to it, but, it's Forrest Gump for me brings back memories of watching Forrest Gump as a kid, and in probably the same way that watching Forrest Gump brings back memories of, the 60s and the 70s for a lot of people who lived through a lot of that stuff. So in that respect, I could watch this and not have a problem. I mean, the cast is great, the music is great. It is, Robert Zemeckis gave us something of a bit of like a fluff piece, we don't have to think too hard. We just get to watch our quote unquote hero's journey. But yeah, like if I'm going to do a deep dive like we did, I'd probably have some reservations, but honestly, I'll watch it. I'll watch it again and again. It's just, I don't know.
No, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that was part of my childhood. It was a movie that did have more adult themes in it that I saw when I was quite young. I mean, I think I saw it right when it came out. So it's got, sex scenes. It's got some war stuff. And it was probably one of the first introductions I had to a lot of the American history that's in it. I remember being a kid and going to Planet Hollywood and seeing like some of the props that they had there from the movie. I remember seeing like the bench that he sits at. Like it's definitely something that has a lot of nostalgia for me, not for what occurs in the movie, but just as a kid watching it. I completely agree with that.
And for anybody who does go to Savannah to take a look at the square where Forrest Gump was shot, there is no bench. I'm just letting you guys because I went and there was no bench. I was just like, really no bench? That's fine, that's cool, the park was cute, whatever.
They do have it at the Savannah Museum. There's a museum where they've got, I think there was like 5 benches and they've all been dispersed, but one of them is at some museum in Savannah,
and the other there's another one in the Smithsonian. I do know that.
See, and for me, when I went to Savannah, this is going off, but when I went to Savannah, I was in the middle of reading...
Were you reading, like, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil?
Yes, thank you. And I'm like, oh, that's the house where they had the Nazi flag. Like... Because that's the house where he murdered that guy.
Because I feel like the only 2 reasons... Well, there's 3 reasons to go to Savannah. Food, Forrest Gump, and Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Yeah. You gotta go find that statue, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we should go to Savannah together. Let's go.
I went once and I only got to go like for a few hours on a Sunday and I loved it. And I'm like dying to go back. I think it would be a really awesome trip.
Let's do it. It's a book. We should do it when we do Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
A book tour.
Yes. Does anyone want us to do a book tour? What's that? Oh, I hear everyone saying yes. So I think it's happening.
I just got a text from Gary. He said that he wants us to do it.
Oh, really? Oh, thank you so much, Gary.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm getting one.
Thanks,
right now.
Gary.
Tom Hanks, have you seen my bench? ? I'll get back to him later. All our famous friends, my God. Yeah, honestly, I would definitely. I'm glad that I saw the movie before I read the book. There's. I feel like if I read the book before I saw the movie, I still wouldn't think very highly of the book, but I would question if I want to watch the movie.
Yeah, probably.
I'd be like, someone made this into a movie? Oh, no. Like, it'd just be like, I don't want to do that.
Imagine if the movie had a scene with Tom Hanks in a diaper and a dunce cap fighting.
Oh, my God.
A gay guy who's dressed up like a fairy. Do you think that the movie would be that successful?
Oh, my God. Or him dressed as the creature from the Black Lagoon carrying a naked lady down the street.
I don't think it would have won so many Oscars.
Yeah, no, I don't think it would have worked. Honestly, I am so glad that they omitted the astronaut and the movie star and the chess and the, wrestling and just put in that running scene. That running scene is classic. Like, and I was telling Jesse last night when we were watching it, I was like, I feel this scene more as an
Yeah.
adult than I did when I first saw this movie, because there are some days where I just want to run. And it's not something that
Yeah.
was ever like, honestly, I don't like running. I do it, but it's more of like, I need to clear my head. I'm going to get up and I'm just going to go for a run.
Mm-hmm.
And like watching that scene, I was like I had a weird emotional response to it, which I've never had before.
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys all know I cry at everything now. But this scene, I didn't cry. I just kind of was like, I feel seen, you know?
Yes, I completely agree. And that is probably, a portion of the movie that I actually like without any type of reservations at the back of my head, when he's having this like mental health crisis moment after Jenny leaves and he doesn't know what to do and he just starts running. And I felt that a lot. And then I loved when he kind of becomes famous from all these people seeing it and he's got this crowd following him and he just stops. He just decides, I'm done. And then one of the guys, the hangers on, like one of the guys following him, yells out, well, now what are we supposed to do? And
Yeah.
I liked that too, because it just shows like how people will start to follow, it's like celebrities or the influencers. Like people
Yeah.
start to follow others without really understanding what that person is about and why they're doing what they're doing. But they had a connection to him without understanding who he is. And I don't know, I felt that was a really good moment for Forrest and how we all react to our lives, and then also how we follow people sometimes for not really good reasons. They don't
Yeah.
even know why he's doing it and they're following him anyways.
Yeah, it was such a good choice to include that in the movie, and I'm thinking about it now and I'm like, it almost feels like a weight lifted off my shoulders when I think about it, because it's like, I'm sure anybody listening to this has had that moment where, like, even if you're not running, if you're in a car and you're driving somewhere that you don't want to go and you're like,
I
could
was
keep
just
driving.
thinking about a car.
Like, I could just keep driving. Like, there were times when I was going into work and I'd be on the subway and I'd be like, I could just take the subway to the end of the line. I don't have to get off.
Yeah.
I could just keep going. And that is what that scene really felt like for me, is like, and it's funny, it's not a scene that I have thought of. Like, I've thought of parts of that scene where the guy, like, where he invents the smiley face and he tells the guy, have a nice day, you know? Like, I've thought of those and I've laughed about that because that was like, whatever, it's jokey. But after watching it again, and watching it twice, actually, because I did watch that scene last night, too. I am so glad that this is a thing that is in a movie, because it is a natural response to want to run away when you don't understand. And he gets to, and he does it.
Right.
And I want to be Forrest sometimes, I want to just run. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of people during COVID who had those feelings where it's just like, if I could just go. And he did it for us, Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hug you. I feel like we just released a lot of feelings about just wanting to go. Just go,
Yeah.
Like, you can't gone girl yourself. You just, unfortunately, you can't just leave.
Yeah, no, that's and I think we're near the end of the episode, and that's actually a good positive note to end on.
Yeah. Now that we ended on a positive note for Gump, we get to do the part that we that's really hard for us to do, the book list. And Christina and I have discussed it, and we have voted, and this was really difficult.
It was.
And
Probably the hardest one so far.
I really do think it is. Like, this was not an easy decision to make. And a lot of it really came down to, how often would we read the book again? Never. Watching the film, how does it line up with everything else? So we have our new standings, and they are our golden child, our angel baby, Rosemary's Baby, or I guess our Satan baby. Rosemary's Baby, nothing can top it. The Wizard of Oz comes in second, High Fidelity, Waiting to Exhale, A Night to Remember, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Forrest Gump, The Birds, Valley of the Dolls, Mommy Dearest, Ready Player One, and Eat, Pray, Love. Sorry to Tom Hanks and Gary Sinise, you did not make it high enough on this list. You can call us about it later. But seriously, if anyone knows Gary Sinise and Tom Hanks, if you guys do want to have them reach out to us, I mean, I wouldn't be mad.
My first question would be like, Gary, you know that you look better with the wig on, right?
What was it like going into space in Apollo 13? Like, we didn't actually go to space. I saw the movie. You went to space. Then he hangs up the phone. This was this was such a fun episode. It's a weird episode. It is. I would definitely, if you haven't seen the movie, watch the movie. If you are interested in the book, by all means, check it out from the library. I don't recommend buying it. I don't know. That's just my advice.
Anytime someone wants to read, reading is a positive thing, even if it's a book that I don't particularly enjoy.
Yeah, reading is fundamental. And snaps. And speaking of reading, we're moving away from Father's Day, and guess what? It's the dog days of summer, y'all. Millennial woo. Woo! It's getting hot out there. We're moving into July, and I couldn't think of a better time for us. This is so weird. We have been following up everything we do with something that relates to the thing we did before, and it's really freaking me out because we did not plan this. But
well, we didn't plan it, and we also kind of like we originally had some books that we wanted to do, and then we moved around their order without thinking what we were doing. So yeah, this is definitely a bridge that we're gonna cross from Forrest Gump into the next one.
Yeah, it is, and it is weird. We are doing, not like it's, I mean, like the whole fact that it lines up like this is just very spooky ooky. We are doing Born on the 4th of July. I'm going to be honest, I have not seen the movie, not in its entirety. I have seen clips from the film, and I have never read the book.
Nikki, I've never seen the movie, and I've never read the book.
Okay, we are going into this blind.
We are fresh virgins for the Born on the 4th of July dish we're about to eat.
Yep. I am very excited. I am glad that neither one of us really has a full understanding of this, because I really enjoy it when we read the books and watch the movies.
Yeah, I do too.
It's just like,
that's
what this podcast is all about, having fun and reading.
There's a different energy when we're both like unsure of something, because we go into it without any real, ideas in our head. It's just like a nice clear start. So then when we talk next time, we'll see what we think.
I know. I am very, we've talked about it a little bit because we've both started reading the book, and I am very excited to get into this.
Yeah. Yes, I am too.
Oh, it's going to be fun. So join us back here in July when we start our month of summer fun. I mean, I'm not going to say it's fun. You'll find out. Y'all, if you don't know, you're gonna. But thanks again. Thanks again, as always, to Jesse for making us sound like geniuses, because he alters the audio and makes us sound real good. And thank you, as always, to the best once again, the best piece of chocolate in that box. Christina, life is like a box of chocolates, and I think I found the best piece.
Aw, thank you, Nikki. I would sit on a bench with you and talk to you about books and stuff, even if you didn't ask me a single question.
You should have just left it with, I would sit on a bench and talk with you. I would hope so. We are on a podcast where we talk for like an hour straight, so I would hope you talk to me.
Sometimes when I start talking, I don't know where I'm going, and that was one of them. I don't know where I'm going with this.
You're like Forrest Gump. You're like, I just wanted to run.
I am.
I was running.
Listen, I am such a hermit crab at this point. Me saying I would sit on a bench and talk to you is actually quite a high compliment for me.
My cheeks hurt from laughing so much. Oh.
Now I feel like an idiot.
Well, Christina, stupid is as stupid does. Oh my goodness. Oh, my cheeks hurt so much from laughing. No, see, this is why I love doing this with you.
Thank you. I did too.
Christina, until next time. Bye.
Until next time.